Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mike Arden. I'm with the United States Fish and Wildlife Services, and today we're going to be going over the greater prairie chicken conservation, the current state of these birds are in, what's kind of causing that, and then the importance of why we need to have genetic diversity extended between these populations, and then the major conservation concerns that's going to go along with that. The current state of these birds, you can see by the six remaining groups here that they're isolated in those fragmented populations. And what that is like Illinois has less than 50. You can see some of these numbers here. Minnesota has 2,000 to 4,000. Missouri has 1,000. But even within those high numbers, those populations are broken into smaller groups that are not able to intermingle with each other. So you may have one group that has 20 birds within it, and then miles away, there's another group that has 50 birds in it, and so forth like that. Um, and so a lot of the causes of that are genetic drift, which is due to those isolated populations. So that means that particular genes are being lost as individuals fail to mate or die. But a lot of this is caused from human activity and habitat loss. So as they're losing more and more habitat, it's actually fragmenting off those populations from one another, and they're not able to breed with those and have to resort to things like interbreeding in order to continue their species survival. So we're going to go over the importance of genetic diversity and why it's a big conservation concern. So the biggest importance with genetic diversity is it helps maintain the health of the population and its survival. And a healthy population, alleys that are valuable in resisting pest, disease, and environmental stressors are being passed around as mating occurs. Mortality and birth rate and reproduction are all affected by genetic diversity. And so, by maintaining healthy levels of genetic diversity, wildlife are able to become more flexible to change and become adaptable to extreme situations such as drought, flood, and habitat loss. So, that's the biggest reason for the genetic diversity and the importance of that. And so that's why we were talking about with the current state of these birds being isolated, they're not able to actually have a good genetic diverse populations and resort back to that interbreeding, which is causing reduced fitness, lower survival rates, and having a higher risk to disease affecting that population. And so the biggest conservation concern from this is a high risk of extirpation or extinction. So if a disease did come into some of these populations that are having lower levels of those alleys passing around, then they could actually wipe that entire population out. And if that continues to spread throughout the state for whatever means, then we might end up seeing extinction within an entire state. Genetic drift is going to occur. So as this continues, more and more genetic drift is going to occur, which is the disappearance of particular genes as individuals die or do not reproduce, as we mentioned earlier. So as more and more interbreeding occurs, more the genetics are going to drift to losing some of the actual genes that are going to be disease resistant or enact them to be able to flexible to environmental conditions such as drought and flooding. Reduced fitness again. So we talked about the importance of reduced fitness. So as the interbreeding occurs, they're going to lose out in mortality rate. The birds are not going to be able to reach a certain age to where they can reproduce and continue spreading those genes along. And it slows down the growth rate because of that. So as these populations continue to go and go on, if nothing happens to help them out, their growth rate will continue to shrink and shrink and shrink, and then eventually they'll go into extirpation or extinction. And then all this information here is listed in these references, which is all this information that I've given to you today. Thank you, and thanks for listening to this press release.